on a Saturday night.
Hello guys, this is the Gaming Revolution here and welcome back to an all new Black Ops 3 Zombies video. Today I decided to go over the entire Transit crew storyline within the Call of Duty Zombies timeline, including the storyline regarding obviously MARLTON being within the NUKETOWN bunker. Now obviously the Zombies timeline came out absolutely ages ago now and people have covered it absolutely ages ago as well. But the reason why I decided to go over this today is because when the Zombies timeline released, I was busy with exams and stuff like that, so I couldn't really cover it. However, at the time you're watching this video, I am currently on holiday, so if you're wondering why I'm not staying up to date with any new news or information that's dropped, or if any new trailers have released, and if you're wondering why I've not been covering those, that is indeed why, but I'll be covering everything once I am back, so don't you worry about that. But I thought that since I'm going to be gone for a few weeks, this would give me a good opportunity to cover the timeline finally, since obviously I've got to come up with like 20 video ideas in a short amount of time, so I thought this would be a relevant video to make since I didn't get to cover them at the time the timelines were released. But if you do go on to enjoy this video, by the end of it, make sure to drop a like down below. Let's try and go for 1,115 likes on today's video, as well as subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future upload here on the channel, and don't forget to turn notifications on to ensure furthermore that you never miss an upload. But with that all out of the way, let's get right on in to the video. So as I said, I'm going to cover the entire storyline of the Transit crew from the timeline, so I'm going to skip through anything that's in between that. So I'm going to start with the timeline of Broken Arrow. So on November the 19th, 1963, in an effort to avoid another undead outbreak, the US government creates the Broken Arrow program, establishing several facilities across the country. The Groom Lake program is folded into Broken Arrow. On August the 11th, 1973, Broken Arrow recovers a shard of Element 115 from Division 9. On September the 29th, 1979, Russman begins work at Broken Arrow. Over the course of his employment, his extensive exposure to Element 115 leads to significant memory loss. On April the 20th, 1983, Broken Arrow begins live animal experiments with the shard, creating BIOS. On June the 24th, 1986, a containment breach involving the BIOS occurs at one of the Broken Arrow facilities. Russman is one of the few people to escape alive. The facility is shut down and abandoned. Its projects are transferred to other locations. On June the 24th, 1996, Victus arrives at the abandoned Broken Arrow facility, still being pursued by undead Richtofen. They recover the Element 115 shard and depart through another rift. Then on April the 10th, 2025, Broken Arrow creates the Denizens. On July the 8th, 2025, Broken Arrow accidentally creates the Avogadro. On September the 1st, 2025, in desperate need of more Element 115, Broken Arrow uses an excavator to drill near the nuclear testing facility known as NUKETOWN. Then on October the 13th, 2025, which is Moon, using the Vril device and the focusing stone, Richtofen completes his grand scheme and swaps bodies with Samantha on the Moon, giving him full control of the zombies and the ether. Maxis contacts the remaining members of Ultimus through the station's electronics and asks for their help to defeat Richtofen. They agree. They launch missiles at Earth, leaving it fractured and broken. They sever Richtofen's connection with the ether, but he maintains control over the zombies. Once Maxis controls the ether in 2035, he returns to the Moon and plucks Samantha from Richtofen's body to join him in Agartha. On October the 13th, 2025, this is when Nuketown Zombies occurs. A nuclear bomb explodes outside of Nuketown as a result of Broken Arrow's drilling. CIA and CDC operatives arrive to find an undead outbreak already in progress. One of the missiles from the Moon hits Nuketown, killing all on sight, except for MARLTON Johnson, who survives by hiding in a nuclear bunker. On October the 13th, 2025, the Earth fracturing triggers further temporal rifts, teleporting an 1800s American Western town underneath a mining facility in Angola. Arthur is pulled through the rift from 1318, arriving in the now buried town. On November the 5th, 2025, Broken Arrow is disbanded after the primary facility is lost in a fire. It is later believed to be an act of arson committed by employees destroying evidence implicating them in the outbreak. Russman, his mind broken after over 40 years of exposure to Element 115, begins to wander the Earth. On March the 18th, 2025, in a distress call call, former CDC Assistant Director George Barkley reveals that the infectious containments have gone airborne. He advises caution regarding any allies showing signs of short-term memory loss, psychosis, delusion, and paranoia. On March the 27th, 2027, a society of survivors who eat the undead is formed. They are the Flesh. On May the 12th, 2027, Samuel J. Stullinger joins the Flesh. On June the 28th, 2027, through the consumption of the undead meat, the Flesh begin hearing Richtofen's voice. He tries to persuade them to build global polarization devices for him to pursue in his new plan, to mend the rift in space-time and acquire full control over the ether. On June the 28th, 2027, Maxis begins communicating to survivors on Earth, telling those willing to listen to build global polarization devices for him in pursuit of his new plan, to open Agartha and reunite him with Samantha, even though it will result in the destruction of the Earth. On April the 4th, 2028, the Flesh broadcast their message across all frequencies. The Flesh broadcast messages telling others to heed their call, and that the path to enlightenment is achieved by consuming the undead. On December the 9th, 2028, Maxis' followers begin constructing a spire near the Hanford site facility. On January the 3rd, 2029, Maxis' followers begin to doubt him, believing he may in fact be evil. They destroy their electronics. On March the 2nd, 2029, Maxis' followers attempt to speak to him again. Many have begun to hear Richtofen, and those loyal to Maxis eagerly await further instruction. On August the 15th, 2029, a broadcast is sent out confirming the fall of the Flesh and Maxis' followers. With each group hearing the voice of Richtofen or Maxis, a battle broke out between them. As they fought, a zombie horde moved in and destroyed all those who remained. Stullinger is one of the few to escape. Richtofen and Maxis are left with no one to communicate near Green Run, where the first polarization device must be constructed. On October the 13th, 2035, Stullinger bumps into Russman, who has stolen a bus from an abandoned Broken Arrow facility. On October the 21st, 2035, Transit happens. Stullinger and Russman run into MARLTON and Abigail Misty at a diner near the Hanford site facility. Maxis asks them to complete the polarization device in his favor. Stullinger, having consumed zombie meat, is contacted by Richtofen, who orders Stullinger to construct the device for him instead. The crew constructs the device for Maxis. The four would become known as Victis. On October the 22nd, 2035, Die Rise happens. Still hoping to regain control, Richtofen teleports Victis to Province 22, where he demands that Stullinger activates the second polarization device. Once again, the crew sides with Maxis. The voices cease for some time, leaving Victis to wander the Earth. On December the 31st, 2035, Buried happens. Victis arrives at an old western town now located beneath a mining facility in Angolia. They discover Arthur in a jail cell. He assists them on their journey. The voices of Maxis and Richtofen return. They activate the final polarization device in Maxis' favor, now corrupted by the dark ether. He reveals his true intentions to Victis and punishes Richtofen by trapping his soul in a zombie. Drawn into Agartha by her father, Samantha witnesses the evil that has corrupted him. When a rift opens in Dimension 63 in 1918, she reaches out to that timeline's Maxis for help. On January the 10th, 2036, after Buried happens, this is obviously within the In the Beginning timeline, Richtofen instructs undead Richtofen to pursue Victus and recover their blood vials. Since obviously from the timeline this is in the perspective of Richtofen, and we see that Maxis' endgame is canon for some reason, so Richtofen is now undead. I'm sure there is a timeline that we haven't seen yet, another perspective of the Chronorium, where Richtofen's endgame is canon. That could be what we see within the next game or something. But then on January the 19th, 2036, Primus Richtofen begins to manipulate Stullinger, opening a rift for Victus to begin their new journey. Pursued by undead Richtofen and an army of the undead, Victus enters the rift. On January the 19th, 2036, Maxis destroys Earth and all its surviving inhabitants. However, within Dimension 63, on June the 4th, 1914, Richtofen is then visited by another version of himself. Now, this other version of himself is the undead Richtofen, who hands him some blood vials. He explains, "You will need this blood. When the time comes, it will protect you," before stepping back through the rift. Now, these blood vials are obviously of Sal and Finn from Mob of the Dead, which undead Richtofen collects for Primus Richtofen, who hands the blood to him prior to Origins. That's why Richtofen already has the blood prior to Origins. So obviously all of the events leading up to Mob of the Dead occur, and due to the four characters doing all of these bad things, each of them dies. Al is murdered by Sal, Finn and Billy, and due to this, Sal, Finn and Billy are then executed by electric chair. Then Mob of the instead happens, Sal, Finn, Billy, and Al battle waves of the undead as they find themselves trapped in a seemingly endless cycle. In the timeline, there's no mention of Al breaking the cycle, which, as I said, I think this is another timeline that we may see where the Richtofen endgame is canon, and maybe when the Richtofen endgame is canon, we instead see what happens when Al breaks the cycle and kills the other three characters, as opposed to Sal, Finn, and Billy killing Al. Then on April 16th, 1940, Richtofen arrives in Dimension 63, where he contacts members of the Illuminati and enlists their help to build a laboratory facility beneath Alcatraz. This Richtofen is the undead Richtofen. Then on April the 18th, 1940, Richtofen meets with Stanley Ferguson and convinces him to assist with the Illuminati's construction of the Alcatraz laboratory. Then on July the 3rd, 1941, Stanley Ferguson reports that the laboratory has been completed and that the subjects will be placed in the stasis chambers upon arrival. Then on July the 4th, 1941, Richtofen returns to the lab under Alcatraz, where he meets Victis, arriving from the empty Earth with the Chronorium. Upon reading the Chronorium, Richtofen discovers numerous timelines documenting their fates and learns about the blood vials. He would later write on this page, "I know now what I must do, Edward Richtofen, 4th of the 7th, 41. Now Richtofen then enters a rift to acquire the blood of Sal and Finn. So if we scroll back up through the timeline, this is where we can see these events transpire. So on April the 1st, 1933, Al convinces Sal, Finn, and Billy that they can build a plane and escape Alcatraz. On December the 2nd, 1933, realizing the plane will never be completed and embittered with rage, Sal, Finn, and Billy plot to get revenge on Al. Then on December the 31st, 1933, Finn, Sal, and Billy lure Al to the roof and kill him. Then on January the 11th, 1934, stepping through a rift, Richtofen secures the blood samples of Sal and Finn. This is the one that just read the Chronorium from the Transit crew. So he went through a rift and collected the blood samples after the characters died. This is before they enter the purgatory-like realm and enter the cycle. Now bear in mind, this is before January the 19th, 1934, where Sal, Finn, and Billy are executed by electric chair, found guilty of Al's murder. So he collects the blood samples from them whilst they're still alive, which is really weird. I don't know what that is all about, but that's what happens. I don't know how he does that, but it happens somehow. Now jumping forward, after Richtofen has collected the blood, what he then does is he then goes back to his younger self and gives the blood to the Primus Richtofen prior to Origins, and that's what I talked about earlier. That's what he then does. So then Victis is placed on ice to be kept safe until they are needed next. Then on July the 4th, 1941, Primus arrives to collect the Victis blood samples from Richtofen. Following Primus's departure, Richtofen learns the location of the summoning key and travels to his next location. And then on October the 1st, 1943, Stanley Ferguson leaves employment at Alcatraz, and then it gets into the whole storyline of Shadows of Evil. But anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you know how to play latest and greatest Black Ops 3 Zombies news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.